Hey, how you doing today? This is Richard from Repair Room USA. I am doing a video series on everything I learned in practical repair school, day for day, exactly how it was explained to me, and I am putting it in a video format to help myself, to help my colleagues, and to have a video representation of what I learned in class exactly, that I could not find anybody else online that was actually explaining some of these things that Jessa at the iPad Rehab School explained to me. Yesterday we covered what the design of these phones and how that they work, and how that everything depends on the PMU, which is the main power source that provides all the different voltages for the phone to work. Some higher than the input and some lower. But today we are going to be covering the next part of the lesson, which was the RF part, and it's so important that it even gets its own color. Yesterday I was talking about how electricity, it's basically kind of like pressure. So if this was electricity and I was blowing into it, I would increase the electricity. And one thing I didn't go over is if this was our electricity inside here, okay, it's not going anywhere. But if I were to touch it to ground, what would happen? All the air out of my balloon would leave. So that's basically what a short is. Now, data recovery requires a really good foundation in repair. And there's no way of recovering the data without making sure that the three main chips, which is the CPU, the NAND, and the EEPROM, to be working from the original board, to be able to either fix them or to either transplant them to another working donor board. Now, if you are going to do a transplant, make sure that the donor board that you're using, that the actual RF parts will actually work. Make sure it's got Wi-Fi. Make sure that those things work on the actual phone before you do any kind of transplant. One of the most important things that we do in data recovery is that we eliminate variables. It's very important that you distinguish the difference between repair and data recovery. Most of what we do in this shop is data recovery, but you have to have a strong foundation in repair before you attempt any kind of data recovery. Data recovery actually in a way is easier than actual repair. That's why it's so important when a customer walks through your door that you sit down and have a conversation and distinguish if they actually need repair or data recovery. Because if they say that there's something on that phone that's important, that they need to recover some of the pictures or videos or whatever, then that's going to change the way that you approach the repair on these devices. If they say no, and that they already have their data backed up and they just want to get it repaired, then you as a technician, and if you accept the job, you have to understand that you're going to be responsible for fixing all the problems that the RF portion of the board may have. That's a very important distinction. Remember, the RF is in charge of capturing analog signals from the air and converting them to digital information. That is a massive chunk of what these digital devices do. RF is such a big deal that it got its own color on the actual diagram because it's so important. If you look at this, this is a sandwich, okay? This is just a random iPhone board that I have there. In order to separate it, you have to put this on a hot plate, all right? And the point is to heat it up, but remember, now there is an interposal. See this gold right here? There is all the way around, this is the interposal. Now this is actually soldered to the bottom and to the top. But when we heat these up to a certain temperature, The solder balls that are on the top board have a lower melting point than the ones on the bottom. That's why when you heat these up, you're going to be looking to heat it up just to a certain amount until all these little tiny balls get loose. And if you look real closely, there is these tiny little balls all the way around. This will be the bottom board and this will be the top. If you look on the inside of the top board, this is where the CPU goes, okay? And on the very back, right next to the CPU, usually you can find where the NAND goes. The NAND and the CPU, and then if you look on this one, it'll have a tiny little chip, which is the EEPROM. Those are the three chips that must be good to be able to recover data. Now on some phones, kind of like the iPhone X, touch is on the bottom. If you want to be able to get this functioning, all you really need to do is hook it up to the battery connector, which is right here, and a screen, and then you just need the power and a screen. But if you want touch, you're going to have to connect the bottom board again to the top to get touch out of it. So how do we know what these chips are? There's a program called ZXW Tools. Now ZXW Tools looks something like this. If we were to use it, it has a lot of really good things in here that you can use. So here we have an iPhone 10, okay? Now this right here and this is the top board and this is the bottom board, okay? Now the bottom board, the top right here, that big chip, that is going to be your CPU. And on the other side of this board, which is here, you're going to have your NAND. So you got your CPU and your NAND. Now do you remember how we found where the heart of the chip is? We have to look where we see a lot of these coils. You're going to see this kind of pattern. When you see this pattern and this chip, that is going to be your PMU. Your PMU is connected to almost every part of the board. It's going to almost every chip. It provides the power. What are these other chips? Some of these you're going to have to look them up. But basically it's the CPU, the NAND, and then the EEPROM, which would be one of these little chips somewhere. EEPROM is usually a tiny little chip. And you have to get yourself familiarized with this program. Now on the bottom board, which would be this one, you also have a baseband CPU, okay? This was in charge of your Bluetooth and your Wi-Fi. You got your main CPU, and the baseband, the bottom, is also going to have a coil, a PMU, I mean. And it's going to be surrounded by coils. Where are all the coils? See this PMIC? BDD main. This is a PMIC right here. I believe if I Google that, that is going to be where the power of the bottom board gets its power. And if you look, these tiny little dots, these are what the boards, the bottom and the top, are connected with. Some of these vias, these traces, they go through the top board and they make connections to the bottom board. See, this one connects here. And if you see the gray ones, these gray ones are ground. So if any of these grounds or something is wrong with them, you don't really have to worry about them. So you have to decide which one of these, if you're missing them, is important. Because sometimes when you're getting boards that come in from the street that have had some kind of shock or damage, 9 times out of 10, if a customer comes in and he's complaining that he doesn't have any Wi-Fi, it's because not that the Wi-Fi chip is bad, but that some kind of connection that went from this Wi-Fi chip in between the layers, there was some kind of problem that one of these would break and fracture. So something in between the two boards, usually when it comes in from a client like that, is because something broke. So when you're getting a board that comes in, say like your girlfriend got the phone and threw it down, or it got run over, or some kind of shock or damage, or a customer comes in and say that is, there's a Wi-Fi is out or something like that, was most likely it is one of those connections that connect one of those tiny little solder balls that connect the bottom to the top has fractured or broken and is causing an open line in the system. That's usually what happens. So, and a lot of people say, okay, well, when I'm separating the board, can I pull and rip off some of those pads by separating the board? No. 9 times out of 10, that's not going to happen when you separate the board. That's only going to happen if there was some kind of shock or hit to the motherboard. And usually when that happens, when there's a shock and you get the board in and you're looking at it, you can put it under the microscope and you'll see that there is a separation, a tiny little separation, that the board will actually be lifted just a tiny little bit, and some of the connections have been damaged because of the flexing of the board, or any of the connections can get ruined that way. So does that make sense? Basically, you're going to get somewhere some chip that's connected that is going to have a connection that is going to go through the chip, and then it's going to be connected. This chip right here, this Wi-Fi chip right here, is connected here, and it's going through this pin, going through the other side of the board, connected to the main CPU. So what happens if, say, there was a shock and this part right here gets damaged and you lose a couple pads? Well, that's something that you would have to go in there, diagnose, see if that's the problem, and then fix it. These types of fixes are not easy. These types of fixes are complicated. But if you're doing repair, you're going to have to fix this. And this is going to be a longer, more complicated repair and a fix. If you're just doing data recovery, do you need Wi-Fi? No, not necessarily. You don't need it. But if you're doing a repair, are you going to send out a phone that has no Wi-Fi? No, you're not. That's why you have to have a serious conversation with the client and ask them, is this phone, is an old 10X phone worth repairing for just repair? No. Go and buy another phone. It's not worth it. But is it worth it for saving your data? Yes, that's another thing. But then when we were saving data, we usually don't have to worry about the bottom board. We can just throw it away. If you're doing repair and you want to try to save this, and there's 4 chips that you need to transplant. You have to remove the baseband CPU, which would be this one. So you would have to find the baseband CPU. You're going to have to move the Wi-Fi chip. You need the NFC chip. You need the baseband CPU. You need the Wi-Fi that's got the Bluetooth on it. And you would need the baseband EEPROM, which is usually a little guy. I don't know where he's at on this board, but you would have to find him. This is the 5G chip. And these kind of give you like an idea of what they are. So you would basically have to start learning what some of these are and locate them on the chip. Also, this right here will give you like a list of different chips. Here are a lot of the baseband chips right here. PMU. And it gives you a hint. PMIC right there. Buck converters. Okay, there's your main power supply. And every single one of these is connected to something else. That's something that we're going to go over in future videos on how to diagnose, how to use this program to be able to diagnose and fix it. This is vital for any kind of data recovery. So what are the weakest links in these? Most of the times when you have damage to those little connections, a lot of the weakest part of it is on this interposal, the pads will actually rip off and they'll be stuck to the top board. In this repair, you would have, there's a, we're going to go over repairing how to repair these, but a lot of times you have to decide if they're even worth repairing. And with ZXW, you can actually look and see if you even need to repair them. Because if you look at these, most of these, all these grayed out ones are ground. You don't have to repair these. And some of them are no connection, so they don't connect to anything. So you have to decide, if this one gets ripped up, do I have to repair it? Is it going to anything vital that I need? Is this dot right there, is it going to anything vital? I don't see it going to anything here. I don't see it going to anything here. It's not going to my main chip. The only thing it's connected to is this right here, looks like, and nothing else. So if this gets damaged, do I need to fix it? Probably not. If one of these gets damaged, where is that going to? U560 chip, LM. I'm not sure what that is, but not always. You don't always have to fix any of these that get pulled off, and most of the time they will get pulled off and they will be. This is the weakest part. The bottom where the interposal is. This is where they get ripped. They get ripped and they end up on this. And what you're going to see here on the bottom board is you're going to see like a red empty space. And we're going to go over that in a future video on how to repair that. So in recap, if you got one or two that are damaged and they're vital, it's fixable. If you got 10 or 20, then is it worth your time to fix? Probably not. So in closing, if you're gonna actually wanted to fix the bottom board, now these chips are easier to actually transplant, but you would have to have a working donor board, and you would have to remove the baseband CPU, the Wi-Fi chip, the baseband EEPROM, and the NFC chip. So that's 4 chips that you actually transplant to a donor board to be able to have that donor board, because that donor board, those chips are paired to the top board. So if I have a working Steve's phone that he brought in and I have a working top board and I hook up John's bottom board, because I need touch, but now I want to use Wi-Fi, Steve's top board is going to be looking for Steve's bottom Wi-Fi, and it's not going to see it. It's going to see John's bottom Wi-Fi, and it's not going to work. It is actually tied into it. So I have to have Steve's Wi-Fi from his original Wi-Fi to be on the new donor board that's John's. So I have to get John's bottom, take off Steve's baseband, Steve's baseband EEPROM, Steve's NFC chip, and Steve's Wi-Fi onto the donor board, sandwich them back together, and in that way I will have a complete working phone. And that's why you have to decide, is that worth it? After this part of the lesson, we're basically going to take off a chip, we're going to reball it, we're going to put it back on, and that is the lesson for the first day. I'm not going to go into the reball I'm going to include that in another part of the lesson on the next video. Please, if you have any questions, write them in the comments. If you want, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next video. Thank you.